Super Bowl ads used to be a big TV buy. Now they're a luxury good. In 2010, a 30-second spot was just over $3 million. Now you're flirting with 7 to 8 million for the same 30 seconds. By the time you add production, talent, digital, a lot of products and brands are quietly putting 15 to 30 million behind what is on paper half a minute of attention.
It's interesting too, because we talk about like the psychology of kind of that competition, right? This is the AI boom, .com boom in previous years. But does it make sense? Does your message get lost in the sauce? And so I wonder, would it be more strategic?
So the likelihood that you're going to make a gigantic leap forward by being in an event like the Super Bowl is quite high. A larger holistic marketing program.
If you're a company that's never done, the markers are there, you're seemingly ready to play on the big stage. Do you use that moment to say, get to know us, here's who we are? Or do you use that moment to do a needle drop? Is that too much too soon? Or do you use it just for the recognition, the responsible and the creative angle? Like, what do you do in that situation?
Welcome to We Fixed It. You're welcome. The show where we take over companies, you come along for the ride, and we try to put them back better than we found them.
All right, let's kick off our episode with some big numbers, because those Super Bowl commercials everyone's been talking about, they ain't cheap. To get our attention while we're on the couch eating nachos, maybe watching a little football, brands plunk down $8 to $10 million for 30 seconds of Super Bowl airtime. That doesn't include production costs and celebrity fees, which would easily push one little commercial into tens of millions of dollars. On the plus side, in the age of streaming, where it seems like there's a separate show for every person on Earth, you have communal mass viewership in real time, people gathering together and having fun, and they're watching you on a grand stage. But that's also the problem. If anything falls flat, a lot of people are watching. You might have just pissed everyone off. Your company might look like a laughingstock. You might even damage your brand forever. Is all that expense and pressure really worth it? Does it pay off? Well, that's for us to decide. And in order to do this successfully, we're going to expand our team roster for today. And boy, did we. Joining Chino, Melissa, and me is Anaka Kobzev. To start, Anaka has advised on a number of Super Bowl campaigns over the course of her career. So that should be enough. But there's more. She's led global communications for legendary agencies like McCann and TBWA. Now as founder and principal of Throughline Advisory, she works as a fractional chief communications officer and advisor. She works with ambitious companies seeking to elevate their visibility through strategic communications and content. Anaka, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. It's great to be here with your dream team. And I'm super excited to be here on the eve of the biggest annual event in media. Really, the one time of the year people really want to talk about advertising, right? So it's a delight. I'm thrilled to be part of the conversation. One other thing that did not make the official bio, I am originally from Seattle, Washington. So I am morally obligated to say, go Hawks.
We'll take it. And I'm glad you mentioned it. We're taping this portion before the show, so we don't know the outcome yet. And we don't know the commercial outcome yet, but we will, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah. No, we still have hope on all fronts.
Yeah.
Great game and some great commercials.
It's anyone's game. Thanks, Annika. I can tell you're going to be instrumental to this conversation. And we're going to get into it with you. Let's do that. But Melissa, we got ads as entertainment. We got millions and millions of dollars on the line. What are we going to fix today?
Well, Super Bowl ads used to be a big TV buy. Now they're a luxury good. In 2010, a 30-second spot was just over $3 million. Now you're flirting with 7 to 8 million for the same 30 seconds. Before you've even paid Ben Affleck, shot anything, or cut the social edits. By the time you add production, talent, digital, a lot of products and brands are quietly putting 15 to 30 million behind what is on paper half a minute of attention. So how do we get here? The Super Bowl is one of the last everybody in the room at once moments left in media. 100+ million people, same game, same 3 hours, no skipping. And the ads stopped being just ads. We rank them, we rewatch them on YouTube, we argue about them at work on Monday or on LinkedIn. Once your media buy becomes a cultural ritual, the spreadsheet stops being the only voice in the room. So, in terms of concentrated money, this is about as intense as it gets. Broadcasters haul in something like 650 to $800 million of in-game ad revenue in a single night. Holiday and back to school might be bigger seasons overall, but nothing else forces that much budget into a tiny window at those prices. So the real question isn't, are we spending a lot? That's, we already know. It's, are we over concentrating a lot of money on one very flashy coin flip? And there are those storybook wins that keep CMOs coming back. Duncan is the modern poster child, one Affleck drive through spot airs once, and suddenly you've got billions of impressions, a jolt of early year sales, and a whole Dunking's universe of menu items and merch. T-Mobile's latest Super Bowl hit didn't just test well, it actually drove more than 10 times the engagement and the average big game ad. People actually searched, clicked, and checked them out right after it ran. This is what you want. Those are the chart agencies put in every pitch deck when they say you deserve your own Super Bowl ad moment. But there's also the graveyard that we don't put in the deck. The crypto bull class, the overfunded apps, and the direct to consumer darlings that bought their way into the game and then quietly disappeared. Some just flamed out. FTX reportedly paid around $6.5 million for its 22 Super Bowl spot with Larry David, positioning itself as the future of finance. Within the same year, it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy with estimated liabilities in the tens of billions, and the ad is now essentially a museum piece of peak bubble energy. So, when people try to measure this over time, the awkward truth is a meaningful chunk of Super Bowl spend is inefficient. Too much money in for too little lasting business out. The league and the networks have a sure thing. The advertisers are the ones gambling. So that's the tension we're going to live in and try to fix today. Super Bowl ads are more expensive, more measurable, and louder than ever. We're not just asking, was it funny? We're asking, was it worth it? And what does worth it even mean when you just paid $8 million for half a minute? So here we go. Let's talk.
All valid points. Yeah. Well, I did a little bit of fun. Let's put that 8 million. We'll start with the 8 million, but not all the production budgets. Let's put it into perspective. You're sitting there with your ad budget, you're trying to be responsible, you're trying to be create a as big a stage as you can. What could you do with that? So 8 billion or $8 million, you could make 8 to 10 billion flyers. Paper now, don't do it. Save the trees, but you could paper the
Mm.
earth with your brand messaging. You could do 20 billion impressions on Facebook. So be seen morning, noon, and night, 24/7. You could cover all of Times Square's best billboards and get the regional, but also get the PR play amplification. You could do that for 2 weeks. You could wrap the entire New York subway system, all the trains, put them in your branding. You could do that for a month. Or you could go on Cameo and buy 1,600 cameos of iced tea talking about your brand. So, um, is the Super Bowl ad, 30-second spot a given? No, I think you probably have to fight for that budget and fight for the allocation and make a good case for it in the room and say, look, I stand behind it. Like, enough people have to sign off on that if, especially for brands that haven't done it before, or maybe have had a spotty track record, and are doing it again. Like, you have to have a lot of sign off and a lot of faith that what you're doing is, better than the budget allocations I talked about, but also going to be substantial for your company. And Annika, you've had experiences like that. Like, you've probably fought the fight or talk companies out of it, or what are those conversations like?
Absolutely, and on both fronts, right? Because the Super Bowl is not for every brand, and it's so important to understand that when a brand is weighing the decision, am I going to make this huge play or not? There are a couple of things that are important to consider. One, are you ready to go big? And is your brand prepared to live up to the moment and the opportunities that come from the single biggest moment of awareness that can be created in the global media calendar, because the Super Bowl is singular. And so, yes, sure, there are a lot of companies that could pony up the cash to be part of this game. Again, not every company, but there are a lot of companies out there that could do it. But it's really important to consider, is your company in the right stage of its life cycle to to be ready to deliver on the uptick of likely customer acquisition, the influx of traffic? Because if you're not, then you've just wasted a whole bunch of money. The other thing is, are you prepared to really invest in making that creative moment pay off? And more, that's not just about the 30 or 60 seconds. It's about the before, during, and after. It's about, hiring a great creative agency or creative leaders who are going to swing for the fences and do something bold, and bringing in the right talent. If you're not ready to step up for that, then you know what? Sit it out, and maybe next year is your year. But it's just the cards are not going to be in your favor for a successful run.
I love what you're saying here, Annika. I think it's so important to understand that you can absolutely destroy value if this spike hits your operating systems, your teams, your app, whatever it might be, and it crashes and you're not able to live up to the promise that you've delivered in this ad, right? And so your call centers are flooded, your app goes down, you don't actually have the merchandise, at the Dunkin' Donut stores, all
Mhm.
that you said you were going to have. And so it really is a long game, like you said, a strategy that you have to make sure and ensure that all of those things are aligned in order to get you there. And then I think one of the biggest things, and I know Chino will jump in on this, is when you said alignment of like the Super Bowl's not for everyone. I think that's so important because I have actually been at companies where we had a Super Bowl ad, um, and yet the ad had nothing to do with our business. It was a
Mhm.
celebrity, you're trying to make it funny, it's supposed to be this moment, but, like, at the end, you put your name out there and people are like, "Wait, what do you do?" Right?
Mhm.
So, Chino, what thoughts?
Thoughts on this? Well, I work with a ton of creative agencies, a few of which will who will have some Super Bowl ads, which I'm excited to see. And Annika and Melissa, I think you bring up a really big point of like the why and the who. So, of course, you need to make sure your brand can afford it. You can actually deliver on what you're promising, but who are you actually working with to build this ad? Right? What is this that needs to be memorable? And, I think about one of my favorite Super Bowl ads of all time was the Snickers Betty White ad where she slaps someone because she's hungry, right? And I don't even remember even what year that was, but it's something that permeates in my brain. When I was at the grocery store the other day, I looked at a Snickers and I thought of this ad years later. And having the right creative on this is imperative because if you're not making something that is a smart ad, strategic, making a magical moment, that's, trend setting, all of the things, there's no point. So you need to make sure you're partnering with the right creative agency. With that, you need to look at the talent that's there. Have they won a can? What other things have they done? Because not every agency is Super Bowl ready and worthy, right? The agency needs to make sure that they have the right talent there, who can produce those strategic and creative and memorable ads. And I think a lot of brands kind of forget that. And of course, an agency is like, yes, if you're going to pay us, 8-10 million dollars to build this, we can make it happen. And yes, we're gonna, put our name in this pitch deck, but in that RFP process, really doing your research on who is there, is important too when you're looking at the talent of who's creating these ads. Because if the ad isn't great at the end of the day, you can spend $10 billion. Doesn't matter. If it's not a great ad, it's going to be forgotten about. If it's not true to your brand, wasn't worth it, and you could have used that money a lot other places. So it's a really interesting point.
Well, it's interesting if you're saying if the company's right and if the signals are there, because I wonder how much of it is, we've run it through this logical decision making process and a flow chart, and we've looked at external factors and all the weather conditions are right. And yes, we should do an ad versus you have a renegade CEO that says we should have a Super Bowl commercial by now. Our competitors do, or where's our super, or you have an agency that comes in and they have a pretty compelling presentation and they say, "You should have a Super Bowl," and the CEO is like, "Yes, we should," or you hire a hotshot CMO from another or head of creative from another, you steal them away from another agency, and then they're fired up and they want to do something big on a big stage for you. So how much of it is instinct, which could work, it could play out in your favor, or pride, or the just the like that we should factor versus like, no, we've run it through, we've done computations. Oh, we asked the binary yes no question, and here it is. Yes.
It's probably a little bit of both, Aaron. Like those factors are absolutely real, right? There are moments where there's a CEO or a CMO who wants to be on a big stage and, perhaps wrongly that drives the decision making. But, any smart corporate leader, marketing leader is going to look at the business rationale because honestly, it's just too expensive to not do that. And guess what? They're going to be on the line if this decision was a big failure and didn't deliver the ROI. I think maybe one way to bring this to just to make it real is with an example. And there's an ad that folks will see in the game this year for Rocket Mortgage and Redfin, which is a really interesting company. Visionary CMO Jonathan Mildenhall, who was at Airbnb and Coca-Cola, they have an incredible ad with Lady Gaga, who is covering the iconic "Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood" song by Mr. Rogers. And it's stirring and beautiful. I love it. But beyond just the creative and, having Gaga, which, that's thumbs up all around, I think it is brilliant from a business standpoint for a couple of reasons. First of all, Rocket acquired Redfin in mid 2025, right? So Rocket is a mortgage company. Redfin is now part of their portfolio, and they are creating a more holistic end-to-end experience for home buyers. So yes, you can find a home on Redfin, and then you can purchase that home and then finance it through Rocket. But most people don't know that Redfin is now part of Rocket. So in at the Super Bowl, they are going to make that link abundantly clear to a huge potential audience. So there's a real business case for why now, why this year, because of that acquisition. So that's number one. Number two, you've got I think a moment in culture where the idea of neighbors and knowing our neighbors and having a little bit more humanity, I think really resonates with so many of us culturally. And we could all use a little hope. We could all use a reminder of kind of going back to our collective humanity. And so I think that creative choice which surely has been in the works for a while, is just so resonant. And then you have an incredible creative talent in, Lady Gaga, who's going to give this, maximum exposure. Like, I just think it is, yes, it's big, it's celebrity, it's beautiful, it's craft, but it is incredibly smart from the business standpoint. And from like a people and culture standpoint, the way Jonathan Mildenhall revealed this, they had a big corporate town hall where they screened this ad, I think probably as part of a bigger corporate event, but they had like a big jamboree, screened it for everyone, talked to their entire employee base about the rationale for this and the strategic thinking behind the brand platform. And, all that whole workforce is getting the inside track on why they made this decision. So they're not just going to see a very expensive ad in the Super Bowl. They're going to understand, yes, you know what? We understand our company has made this bet because it's actually going to make our jobs as salespeople, as customer service reps easier. So I think that's one way of sort of understanding like an A plus example of why this works.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah, same. Well, I was just gonna say it takes a lot of restraint and a lot of knowing your brand and a lot of critical thinking and a lot of trust to do something like that because it's gonna air right after a chip commercial where a baby runs up on a coffee table and steals the last chip. And then, and then what's next? And you're gonna come with this moment of humanity and unite us all together. Like it better be good.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think this is the positive side of the planning, the alignment, all the things. I love, Annika, what you were, describing here with this, because I think on the opposite end, the cautionary tale is, Super Bowl ads can be a terrible misfit for fragile or unproven businesses like early stage launches without reliable product market fit, crypto style bubbles, like all the things we've seen where, trust is shaky or cash burning companies that can't really trace their, revenue payback on a very expensive awareness campaign. So, if your unit economics, your retention, your customer experience, your operations, aren't already solid, the Super Bowl just amplifies those weaknesses in front of 100 million people, and so you'll fall flat. And so this is a great example, Annika, of where you're seeing what that journey can look like and where you can really, be very thoughtful and intentional about it, build up to it, right? I know that there's been this whole week, there's been a lot of leaks of Lady Gaga singing the song, and there's all this talk about it. And so for you to bring that up is just a wonderful thing because she's getting a whole bunch of awareness from fans about, oh, why is she singing that song, right? That's a great song, and it comes to a time in our country where, taking care of your neighbors is important, right? So it's just a wonderful thing that to share that like, think about how you actually put together a plan and execute it and actually get the buy-in from the people in the company is gonna make it so much easier for them to deliver on that promise.
And I think just adding to that too is really important to note. It's that buy-in from the actual company. So whether that's the brand and or the creative agency that we're at that screening, because we also have to take into account the market right now. There's a lot of layoffs happening. $8 million. If you're watching an ad and 2 months ago everybody was laid off, it's like, where is this? Where was the money for that? Did we just let go of 100 people to afford this? And so being able to explain that rationale is really important. And I think, Annika, it's a really great example because they have checked the boxes. They have done something right. And I'm excited to see what happens on Tuesday, after all of the excitement on, the ROI there. Um, but I do think it's important to talk about when it is a miss and, looking at as a brand, your own internal economics within in the market. So if you have been laying people off, maybe this isn't the time to be letting, running an $8 million ad, as you were mentioning, Melissa, where, you're in a fragile state. But being able to sell your idea to your people will also be a really great case study for how you can sell it to the market. So again, a win-win-win on that ad, just because they have done the checks and balances and they've allowed their internal teams to understand what is happening there so that in a few months, it's making their lives easier. Everyone has had that buy-in versus on the flip side where people don't do that and, they just couldn't afford it at the end of the day and people have to get let go.
Right. From a strategic lens, it's really important that, a company knows where they are in their life cycle, right? And so to your point, companies go through ups and downs and things like that. And so the tone and being like deaf to what they're going through, if they've just had layoffs, the last quarter, if they've had, to shift their market strategy, whatever it might be, is very important to make sure that again, alignment to me is so important and to be very careful and cognizant of what you're saying to your teams as well as to your loyal customers as well. Because sometimes I also think the ads like try to grab customers that aren't really their demographic, right? You understand the customer segmentation and you're kind of going for a new segment. Well, how does that make the loyalists feel? Right. So,
Yeah, it's for sure. And you also have to look at the programming landscape and understand not just what your competitors might be doing or your category might be doing, but what the sequencing of ads looks like and the other ads in the market. Because like Annika, we were saying, like you can do these bold message statements, and if it works, it cuts through. And if there's four of them in a row, people feel preached to, and they feel like, wait, are we here to be entertained and watch football? And what do you see? Like, why are we getting so fired up about something right now? I want the baby on the coffee table. I want the
mhm.
grandma, arm wrestling the grandson for a bag of cookies. And it turns out the grandma is played by, John Cena. I don't know, but, you know what I mean? Like, it's a rare occasion where you're not just, the stakes are not just your own brand and your own company and how you come across, but who played before you, who played after you, how the game's going. If it's a terrible game with no action, maybe I guess maybe that's a good chance to stand out, but or maybe people are just less invested as a whole and you don't get the buy-in that you wanted. So stakes are just higher and higher.
Absolutely. It's the moment where you really want to invest in having a reason to be there and having a strong creative idea, because falling flat is you're just doing yourself a disservice. There's a brand that a Chinese e-commerce brand that you all may remember, Temu, that a couple of years ago bought 6 Super Bowl spots. And I mean, it was unbelievable. And they ran the same terrible creative in 6 Super Bowl spots. I mean, over and over and over again. I remember watching it and just thinking, like, it's the same. They're running the same spot. And, sometimes that happens twice. An advertiser will get a bonus. Like, no, it just kept going, and it was terrible, but, it did a short-term job of raising awareness of a brand that really was still new to a lot of American consumers, right? I mean, as terrible as the ad was, it did accomplish awareness, but over the long run, I mean, they got awareness, but the conversation around that brand was just about how much everybody hated the ads and was annoyed by the brand. And then when you dug in, they had terrible customer service reviews and product quality reviews online. And so they made a massive, massive media investment. I mean, it's hard to imagine a company like, I mean, it's very few companies have invested that much in terms of like 6 spots over the course of the game. But over the long run, I think that was just a real missed opportunity. And they could have done, even with a little investment, just more creatively to just sort of tell a more compelling story. And then, to the earlier conversation, having the infrastructure in place to deliver on what they promise, which is sort of shop like a billionaire, right? Like get, low prices, but get all the things and at your disposal. So that's one that is just an interesting one. And now today, I think they've been kind of wiped off the map because in the US because of tariffs. So RIP, Bamu.
Well, and it makes it for a viral moment though, like they become a meme company and Tay
Mhm.
definitely has. We've actually had a podcast about them before. I think that I love what you say also in terms of like really kind of understanding like what that investment looks like and feels like for the person sitting and watching in the audience, right? The other thing I like when companies don't take themselves too seriously and they admit, like, I can't remember who it was last year, but I think it was John Krasinski that was the spokesperson for whatever company it was, but they were like, "We can't afford it." So they ran his ad like before the Super Bowl started. Like, so they're like, you're not going to see us until the end. Like, and then like they kind of did a little teaser. And then at the end, like after the Super Bowl, they ran his ads. Right. And it was kind of
Right.
funny as they said, we can't afford to play during the Super Bowl, but we hope you'll tune in or whatever it was. But I think that like, kind of understanding where you fall in the whole atmosphere of Super Bowl ads is, like, very important, and so, to your point, tuning like, come on, like, that's not even, the cheap shop for e-commerce for everything, right? So, like, really, is this the place where you wanna, look cheap as well again, still, I mean
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic because people want different things. They all want successful outcomes. But, you've got, if you're on the agency side, you've got the client saying, put the logo on everyone's face, make sure that the name is repeated, make sure they know the name of the new product extension that's out. If you're on the agency side, you want to do something avant garde. I mean, Super Bowl commercials are forever. So you want to make your market history. And maybe it's like you don't even show the logo, and they're like, no. And then you have the financial responsibility side of it, where it's do no harm, right? Don't upset the brand. Don't change expectations. Just layer on or don't take us off course.
Yeah.
So be safe. Like I said, we know the Super Bowl ad playbook, right? It's a celebrity pairing that's unexpected. It's a reunion of a sitcom. It's a grandma, it's a baby, it's a dog. It's so play along those established lines, even, and maybe that isn't right for your brand or right for your company. So it's all those different factors like competing against each other. But it's like, in Hollywood, they say even if you make a bad movie, but you make it to theaters, like you've won. That's a big accomplishment. It's kind of like if you make a Super Bowl commercial, and even if it's regardless of how it's received, as long as you didn't uh, make everyone feel bad about themselves or say something extraordinarily racist or something. If it's a mid tempo ad and it just does what it does, you maybe you've made your career on it, or you've at least not taken the brand down, and you've boosted sales a little bit. So maybe it did what it was supposed to do.
Mhm.
Mm,
I guess I would ask you, Aaron and Annika, about this, though. Like, what is the definition of ROI on an ad like that? So when you're talking to an agency, when you're doing those types of things, like, what are you really like? Because it's really like if you're spending $8 million, it's not really good enough to just like stay where you're at. Like, why the heck would you do that? You should have invested that into 8 million decals that people could put on their computers? So I'm just wondering, like, in your perspective, when you're talking to an agency, when you're talking to the board, when you're sitting at the C-suite table and you're trying to get an ad through, what are you saying you're hoping the returns are gonna look like?
First of all, every brand will, it will be different for every brand because every brand has different business goals and objectives especially in looking at an event like the Super Bowl. But there are some measures that one would likely consider. I mean, obviously, sheer brand awareness. For example, if you're a newer brand that is looking to scale, if you're a brand that is maybe a few years old, has built the infrastructure, is really starting to hit its stride, and is ready to take a giant leap forward, you might look at the ROI in terms of your overall unaided brand awareness, the likelihood that you're going to make a gigantic leap forward by being in an event like the Super Bowl is quite high. And so, that there are measures like that, customer acquisition, also driving down I mean, it sounds sort of counterintuitive, right? Because Super Bowl commercials are, of course, so expensive for all the reasons we've discussed. But if you're looking at it in the context of a larger holistic marketing program, not just those 30 or 60 seconds, but you're building out a more considered long-term program with that as your anchor point, and and whether that is for a quarter or the entire year, the ROI on that actually can make a lot of sense because the audience that you're going to reach is so significant it can really drive down sort of the cost of customer acquisition over time. It can drive down like it sounds kind of bananas, but it's the truth. Aaron, I don't know if there are any other ads that you have from your experience or observations.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's two types of metrics you can look at. So one would be if it's a product tease or a product launch, and it's Cheetos Lime Supreme or whatever, and you just announced it and everyone gets a bag. You can for sure look at quantitative metrics the next day, and then look at sales trends over time and point back directly to that ad as the trajectory point, right? But if you're an insurance company, or even Budweiser does the the recurring every year ads, it's more of the halo effect of, are we staying on recognition on a big stage? Are we adding to the narrative? Are we building on last year? But it's not the point of purchase sale necessarily dollar for dollar. It's more, are we elevating our brand? Are we elevating our market share? Are we doing all the things we should be doing for a company of our size? And are we executing well on them and fulfilling the promise that we set out to? So that's what I'd add, is that, point of purchase sale the next day, and did we uplift our brand?
I'm also hearing you say that again, it's about understanding where you are. So it makes the most sense for companies that are at specific inflection points in their journey as a company, right? So a scale up brand that's ready to jump from maybe regional to national stage, right? Some, you know, so for an awareness perspective, a category challenger with real distribution trying to break top of mind, or even an incumbent defending their share of the business from a disruptive rival, right? So really kind of establishing who they are. I know that that is something that makes a lot of sense to me in terms of those ads, like being, a company in that scenario. It's just scary that there are still so many companies that invest in this, and it's like a rescue mission trying to and then in 9 months they're bankrupt, right?
No, it's true. There's also sometimes the bandwagon effect a little bit.
Mhm.
Like there it feels like almost every year there's a theme to the types of advertisers that all of a sudden rush into the game. This year, AI companies, it's like the AI bull. So, we're gonna see a lot of ads either for from Anthropic and Claude, OpenAI. Google is focusing on Gemini, and then other companies that are touting their AI tools. To, if a few years ago, there was a big focus on pharmaceutical companies kind of coming out of COVID and healthcare. And, and then, of course, as we all know and fondly remember, the great crypto bull, and even going way back, like the dot-com bull,
Mhm.
bajillion years ago, where, all of these dot coms that had loads of funding got into the game, and then
But it's interesting too, because we talk about like the psychology of kind of that competition, and we have these like the zeitgeist of whatever the year, right? This is the AI boom, .com boom in previous years, but
so much money
does it make sense? Does your message get lost in the sauce?
the reason
You know,
for market
trying to get the market share, but if everybody's doing it,
audience
do you guy there? Do you miss? And so I wonder, on the other half, from your perspective, like, would it be more strategic? For example, maybe you don't spend $8 million, maybe it's 2 million on the advert before, saying, listen, maybe it is a little, we couldn't afford to hear, but remember us here, and making sure the paddock around the Super Bowl ad spot, because
that way.
if everybody's there, I don't necessarily want to be in that same conversation where my name and brand gets lost in all of that. So curious to get your take on that too.
This year, Roe is in, which is interesting. So it's the competitive set and understanding the big picture is also always something to consider.
But it's interesting too, because we talk about like the psychology of kind of that competition, and we have these like the zeitgeist of whatever the year, right? This is the AI boom, dot-com boom in previous years. But does it make sense? Does your message get lost in the sauce? You know, trying to get the market share, but if everybody's doing it, do you miss? And so I wonder, Annika, from your perspective, like, would it be more strategic? For example, maybe you don't spend $8 million, maybe it's 2 million on the ad right before, saying, listen, maybe it is a little, we couldn't afford to hear, but remember us here, and making sure that you're padding around the Super Bowl ad spot, because if everybody's there, I don't necessarily want to be in that same conversation where my name and brand gets lost in all of that. So curious to get your take on that too.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, and I agree. And research shows that when lots of brands, especially from like, let's say, just a category that is less familiar, when a bunch of brands in the same category show up, people get confused. They can't remember which was which. And so the impact of that investment for, all of those brands is diluted. So I think it's a really smart point. If everyone in the automotive category or everybody in AI is in, you know what, maybe you're going to sit this one out. And zig where others are zagging. It could be a much better strategy.
I also think that there's that halo effect in the sense that, like, if you see an ad go viral, I love those companies that jump on that and then kinda create a response. Do you know what I mean? In their own
Mhm.
way. This is the thing that bothers me the most about Super Bowl ads is that it is hard to discern sometimes what the company does, or, like, you'll be like, "Oh, they had this spokesperson because I love this actor or I love this athlete," or whoever it might be, and it was, for, let's say for weight loss drugs, right? But now I can't remember, was it Roe? Was it Him and Hers? Was it, like, who was that, right? But you just know, in the sense of it, and so, like, to me, that's not great, right? That you're not getting what you want me to, you want me to go to the Row website, right? And that's what you want. So, I think that that connection too is still, like, a little foggy sometimes, even when you get the best people. I mean, that's where Duncan killed it because they got a Boston voice. They got Ben Affleck. They got Tom Brady, right? They got the Boston voice of where Duncan's located. You know what I mean? And so, like, you immediately were like, oh, okay, Duncan, right? Versus like, oh, it was a coffee place. Was it Dutch Brothers or was it Starbucks? Like, I don't remember. His favorite coffee is something, right? So I think that, like, having that really tight connection is hard, and I mean, it's a challenge for agencies and CMOs alike, but, that is definitely, when you think about the culture of who's sitting around, you're watching the ads, there's stuff going on, you're eating, you're kinda paying attention, you're not paying attention. So you really have to make that connection and make it make sense to the person the person sitting in the audience.
Yeah, well, Melissa, with the Dunkin', if you got bought in on it, it wasn't just go buy a Dunkin' tomorrow, which of course they want you to do, but there was more. There was like a 22-minute mini movie of that, which I watched, and it was great, and you could get immersed in that world, and they had more content for you, and they built off of it, and they're still playing the Dunkings thing. So Super Bowl ads are not a fixed, you know, time coded thing anymore. They can be as immersive or as uh, layered, multi-layered of omni-channel campaign as a brand wants it to, and they can last as long as they want it to. And it doesn't even have to start at the ad. They could tease. Now there's a teaser of the ad and a teaser of the teaser. And like you said, a secret celebrity doing some PR stunt. Like, why are they carrying their groceries upside down and they're falling on the street? Uh, I guess they're losing their faculty. No, they're not. It's just a stunt, so it grows, and it's not a 30-second, it's not a 60, it grows and grows, and it can set brands up. I mean, really, for a good ad could set brands up on a 3-year trajectory.
Exactly. And I'm curious too about call to action specifically as, making sure that that brand awareness is there and you're not mixing it up with another brand. I have started to see a lot more brands using QR codes. Again, don't love it. Post COVID era, you know, you don't love scanning a QR code at a menu. But I wonder when you're spending $8 million dollars on an ad, I really don't want someone to mistake this and, maybe almost forcing that fit and driving that action with the QR code. I wonder if that's something we're gonna see more because, at Costco, as I've been looking at, different TVs, I've found, certain brands actually will push out ads with QR codes, which is something I've not really experienced. I'm seeing that more and more from different ads I've been watching, and I'm very curious to see if that's something that's gonna continue to ensure that brand recognition is there. I'm curious to get your take on that, Annika and Aaron and Melissa.
Look, to the point of ROI and and ensuring that we've got data and then metrics where we can track the impact. I think every brand is looking for more accountability, and so it's possible. It'll be interesting to see if any of that pops up on Sunday. But even if it's not a QR code, I predict we'll see different ways to engage and different kind of calls to action, whether that's going to a website or it's searching something on TikTok or whatever it may be. That is now part of the Super Bowl playbook because the brands who are making these investments, they want the data. They want to drive the engagement and the traffic. They want to capture that audience. They want to start either deepening or building a relationship with a widely expanded customer base. And so yeah, I think there's no doubt that we'll see kind of different forms of that manifesting in the big game.
Thanks, Annika. If you're a company that's never done an ad and let's say the markers are there and you're seemingly ready to play on the big stage, do you use that moment to say, get to know us, here's who we are? Or do you use that moment to do a needle drop like, look, we just changed everything you thought about everything. Boom. There's no more fees on anything we do. Like, is that too much too soon, or do you use it just for the recognition, or what's I guess the responsible and the creative angle? Like, what do you do in that situation? And you're not Budweiser. You don't get 4 ads per game, and all the background signage. Just you got one shot. What are you gonna do?
Go big. It's
Yeah.
the I think there are brands that have been really successful over time. Like the things that we remember, the things that do become sort of those cultural touchstones and the things that are talked about the next day. It's when there's something that actually breaks from the Super Bowl playbook. And so I mean, I think there is value to using that moment to either, reintroduce yourself, to surprise that audience. There's got to be a real like reason for that. Otherwise, you're just doing something random that is not going to connect back to your brand. I mean, I think about a few years ago, this was like maybe one example of the from the crypto bull that was successful. But do you remember that Coinbase had that ad where it was just the floating QR code and everyone was just like, what is happening on my screen? Why is there a floating QR code? Today, Coinbase is still active around, they are one of the companies that has survived and thrived. I mean, it got everybody in America picking up their phones and pointing at that QR code and like signing up for Coinbase. I think I did it during the game. So, I mean, they are a brand that had a real reason. Like, yes, there was awareness, but there was a real reason to sort of, okay, hey, here's what we're doing. We're doing something bold and totally different. And it really worked for them. So, yeah, I mean, you're in the biggest stage. Like, don't be afraid to swing for the fences.
True. And that one cost about $1 to produce. It looked like.
Exactly. They were able to stay on the low end of the range with that gem, that's for sure.
Yeah, a summer intern was in charge.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's we have ideas. We'll fix this situation. We're going to help companies navigate whether they should be in the game, whether they should keep coming back, whether it's doing what they intended for it to do. And so if they know their company well, really understand what they're all about, you don't want to learn something about your company negatively for the first time when it's playing out on a stage that size. So really do something that's, well, we've said this before, but like do something that's true to your brand and your company, but do it loudly, in a participatory kind of way where people want what you're talking about. Do the mic drop. I'm all in favor for that. Be bold. Um, Also, you have to, I said it earlier, but you have to look at not just your head-to-head competitors, but look at what does the day of entertainment look like? What does the programming look like? Maybe plan for contingencies. If the game's going bad, what kind of mood are people gonna be in? Does our ad play in that format? If people are in a great mood, is it gonna play in that? Like test it. I love the town hall or the road show or something besides just like, here's our teaser campaign, and then it's too late. You have an opportunity to really craft it. Not to the point where you've sucked all the creative life out of it, but to the point where you're like, look, we've shown this every number of different ways. People love this. We can't get this out fast enough. If you don't belong there, regardless of whether you have the money, if you have new money and you're flashing it around, maybe hold on to it for a little while and see if you last the year. Be a little bit responsible, fiscally responsible. But even if you've never had an ad before and all the markers are there and the signals are there and your competitors are holding back and you just, it's not a point of pride and a point of contention like, we've got to do this because we just we got to put our flag in the sand type of thing. It's like, no, we belong at the Super Bowl. Our brand definitely should be there. We're in league with the other companies that are there. We got something to say. We've got interesting creative. We got a powerful message. We can quantify the results one way or another. um yeah, let's go. Let's do this ad. We're this yeah let's we're all in. We're bought in. Melissa, if we put that all together and that's our advice to the next company up that's looking at next year's ads, did we fix their situation?
I think we did. I think we brought awareness to the topic of Super Bowl ads. I think there's a few things I would say, only invest and buy an ad when the rest of the machine is already working, meaning your operations, you understand who your customers that are and you understand who the audience is and you have a product and services that can handle that national spotlight and can handle it, because you wanna make sure that you can deliver on those promises that you are sharing in these ads. I'd also say, and I think you might have mentioned this, but making that Super Bowl ad the center of a larger campaign and a very intentional campaign, not just a 30-second event, I think is important. And lastly, but, very importantly, is being intentional and having true alignment. So, understanding tone, understanding what else is going on in the company, understand what's going on in the economy, so to speak, so that you're making sure that you're not gonna be the next company canceled.
Thanks, Melissa. Chino, did we help cautionary tales that are planning for next year? Do we just, give them the rationale to go spend elsewhere? And then the good companies that have something to say, do we give them the go ahead? And are they amped up now? Did we fix it?
I think so. I think again, knowing what that message that you're trying to share and making sure that it's a strategic one. Take the emotions out of it is I think the big kind of takeaway from this conversation for me um, on kind of the Super Bowl. And you're never gonna have as many eyeballs as you will on that moment. So make it count. Don't be afraid to be bold. Get your teams around it. Do as much testing, be strategic, hire Anaka to make sure you're crossing all the boxes there. But I think if you can check yes to all of these kind of precursor questions, go for it. Do it next year. Yeah.
Chino and her Super Bowl playbook.
We love a playbook.
Annika, Did we fix the situation? Do companies do they understand how to play now? If they've never done an ad, if they did an ad that flopped, if they want to come back and try again, do we put them in a better place than they started before this episode?
We fixed it. We fixed it. I think companies need to take a hard look at themselves and really ask the question, is this the right moment for us? Are we ready to play? And if you can look at all of those factors and come to the smart decision, yes, then I think we've had a great discussion about all of the considerations. Get a great creative agency partner. Think about the end to end of it all and build around it. It's not just those 30 or 60 seconds, it's so much more. And then to the point of delivering on the product, delivering on the operations, and really delivering for your people and ensuring that people in that company understand the why and can use that Super Bowl moment as a rallying cry and something positive to take forward. I think we can do all those things. Yeah, we've fixed it, and companies who've listened, hopefully, they know when they should take the field and when they should stay on the sidelines.
Hmm. I love that. Thank you. That's a touchdown for us. I'll take it. Go team.
Go team.
Well, that's going to wrap up our episode. Before we go, I'd like to give one more big thanks to Anaka Kobzev one more time for joining us. This would not have been the same without you here. How can everyone keep up with what you're doing now?
Oh, that's so kind. You can find me on LinkedIn, Anaka Kobzev, on LinkedIn. I'm visible there, so please connect with me.
Fantastic. Please do. Yeah. And thanks, Annika. Thanks, Chino and Melissa. Thank you to everyone who is listening. If you like what we're doing and you want to advertise your company on our podcast, we'll do it for 7 million. That's last year's price, guys. Agents are standing by, so you better reach out to our team at advertise@wefixitpod.com. That's advertise@wefixitpod.com. Keep listening, keep supporting your home team. They're going to go all the way next year. I can feel it. And we will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of We Fixed It, You're Welcome. We go into every episode somewhat cold, and nothing we say should be construed as legal advice, financial advice, or anything that would get us in trouble. All trademarks, IP, and brand elements remain property of their respective owners.